Capacity's changed, so they estimated in that first Indianapolis 500 was in the 75,000 range in terms of numbers of people that came in 1911. We host well over 300,000 people here for the Indy 500. I think at our height, in the late 80s, early 90s, you could have probably made an argument that there were close to 400,000 people in the venue. We have since then taken a lot of our space away where you just have people that did a GA in the infield. So all of turn one now is not accessible for fans because it's part of our road course. Used to be bleachers in there as well as people could do standing room only. Same with turn four. We've taken a lot of the racetrack out to use for the road course and some other things, which has then reduced our capacity. But we have roughly 250,000 permanent seats, so we're the world's largest sporting venue in terms of permanent seats here.
When you drive the track, what's the most dangerous part?
It depends on the driver you talk. The wind is probably the most dangerous because the facility is so big. So from the top of turn one to the top of turn three is over a mile in distance. So as the driver's coming down the front stretch where the wind is blocked because of grandstands, they may not have any wind, and then going down into the backstretch, the wind there's not as much blocking, or the wind could actually be in a different direction. So there are wind socks throughout the facility, so the drivers are watching wind socks because the way the wind pushes down on the front wings of those cars changes the way they grip, either too much grip in the front or the back. So that's the biggest thing for drivers, just to be aware of the constant weather changes that can happen just from one end of the track. And there are times in May where we'll have one corner of our track will rain and it'll be sunny on the other end of the racetrack because the facility is so big. So just watching weather. The drivers will tell you that going into turn one is probably the scariest part, because as you go into turn one, the drivers, when the car's set up right, they don't lift. So they're going flat out through the corner, and they turn into that corner, and you can't see all the way through the corner because of all of the grandstands and things that are built on the inside, and they just have to trust that once they are able to see that there's not an issue or something on the other end. So that's the mental toughness really for them to be able, and the car will do it. It's just a matter of whether mentally that they can do it. So turn one is probably the most difficult one mentally for a driver to prepare for.
Unique one here, the milk that is drank.
Yes.
How many? Do you have all sorts of different kinds, and they fill out a profile sheet?
They do. They actually fill out a in the late 30s, we had a driver who wanted buttermilk when he won the Indianapolis 500, started this tradition of milk. And now what the drivers do on the front end, they say, I want whole milk, 2%, or skim milk. And the American Dairy Association folks have a cooler with all of the milk in it, and when the race ends, they get the appropriate bottle of milk out for whatever that driver selected, and that's how they choose the milk. Chocolate milk, we've talked about that, but the Dairy Association, although they're getting better right now, so there's that chocolate milk push, but they haven't been real comfortable yet with allowing somebody to choose chocolate milk. So right now it's not one of the options for the drivers. We toyed with the Grand Prix of Indianapolis, which was the first time we did an IndyCar race on the road course last May to kick the month of May off. We toyed with the idea of let's start a new tradition there, and not just milk, make it chocolate milk for the Grand Prix of Indy, and for whatever reason we didn't get to that point, but it was a conversation we had internally.
Lactose.
What's that?
Any lactose intolerant winners so far?
I don't think we've had any lactose intolerant. The closest thing we've had to a sort of a disaster with that is Emerson Fittipaldi won the race one year. It's one of our two-time winners, Formula One champion, a really big name in terms of motorsport, and he owned a bunch of orange groves in his home country of Brazil, and his gang, whatever, convinced him that he ought to drink orange juice first, so they gave him orange juice, he drank orange juice and then the milk. So the American Dairy Association obviously wasn't happy, but then our fans felt like it was blasphemy, the tradition of milk. Here's this, they don't care that he was going to drink orange juice, but to drink orange juice before the milk, and it sort of backfired on him because it is one of those traditions that is just really important to the Speedway, and he ended up apologizing for not drinking the milk first. So that's the closest kind of weird non-dairy association, and I would guess that if somebody was lactose intolerant, they would figure out a way to at least dump the milk on themselves, not drink it, right, but just to be part of that tradition.
Were you here when Danny Sullivan?
I was here as at that point in time maybe a senior in high school, and would have been my 8th race. So I've been to every race since 1977. So he won in 1986.
Was that fortune or skill?
85, I guess. It was 85. A little of both. Our track is so narrow. I think a lot of it was just fortune that the car had pointed itself in the right direction. But even in that situation, you still have to have the skill and know when to get back on the power and not overcorrect. So it was a little bit of both. Probably more luck, but there was an element of skill in that. And I'm sure that Mario Andretti, who he was battling at the time, and I'm sure Mario figured that was it. My biggest competitor of the day is over, and I'm going to end up winning this race. And at the end of the day, Danny came back and won.